Today, we're looking at two very important theories in political science. And this is in chapter 9 of a textbook. And if you read chapter 9, I hope all of you are up to date with your readings. It will give you more information on these theories that we're going to be discussing today. Now, in chapter 9, you have many theories that are highlighted there and discussed in details. Today, we're discussing two of these theories, very important theories that have defined the discipline for ages, that have been the basis of research, academic research and scholarship, and conclusions about society, about government and governmental affairs, etc. So let's take a look at this. Now, the first one is normative and the second one is empirical. Now, the terminology it really gives it away because normative, we talk about society, we talk about norms, we're talking about standards, right? Normative norms, normal, and empirical theory, right? Empirical is hands-on research and so forth. Normative political theory looks at the world in terms of what it should be, right? What it should be. So this is let's underline this, students, what it should be. Now, what does that mean, what it should be, right? If I say you should be aggressive, for example, aggressive in terms of how you present your case, how you present your research, it suggests that you are not doing that yet, but that's what you should be doing. So how society should be, how the world should be. And it says here how governmental and societal systems should work ideally. So let's highlight this as well, ideally. So should be and ideally, right? So when somebody says should be and ideally, they are saying that you are not in that current state, that you need to be there. That's what it's saying. So normative political theory says society is not where it should be right now. There's a state that it should be, and it hasn't achieved that state. It hasn't gotten to that state. It is not in that state. That's what normative political theory is. Let's take a look at it a bit closely. It views the world ethical and philosophical lenses, right? So this type of theory utilizes value judgment. So there's value judgment there. It passes judgment. Again, if somebody says you are not there yet, that's a judgment, that's a value judgment statement. They have made conclusions that you are not where you should be, right? So that's why we say it uses value judgment. And it uses norms and standards as its basis for interrogation of government and systems. So what are norms? Norms are things that we do in society. We talked about norms in chapter 5. And norms are things that we do in society that we take for granted. For example, you walk on the streets, you don't scream at the first person you see, right? Most likely you will say good morning, good afternoon, good evening to that person because that's the expectation, right? That is normal. In the political sense, you have a right to vote as a citizen. That's normal. That's expected. You finish high school and you go to university. That is really the norm, right? Again, not everybody does that, but most people do that, and that is the norm, right? So there's nothing unusual or controversial about that. Norms are expectations in society that have been established for a long time, and that goes with standards as well. The standard practice, the standard expectation is this, is that, is that. So it uses norms and standards as its basis for interrogation of government and systems and society as well, right? So now when we say should be, let's highlight this here. Should be and ought to be, right? Ought to be, ideally, and so forth. The basis are this. What is going on currently? It uses the current state of affairs to determine if government is where it should be, right? The current state of affairs to make these value judgments as to determine whether government is where it should be. Now, students, this is a very important point. Please take note of this. It uses norms and standards. Normative political theory uses norms and standards to determine where government should be. And that's where the should be is coming in. And that's where the ought is coming in. And that's where the ideally is coming in as well. This is a very important point that I want you to take down and understand about this theory. The contrast then is empirical political theory, and this is concerned with the present. Now, Normative is also concerned with the present, but it uses the present to determine where society should be, right? And that's the difference. Empirical political theory is concerned with the present or the current state of governmental affairs and stops there. Unlike normative, it stops there and dwells on the present. Let's read this one more time. Empirical political theory is concerned with the present or the current state of government or affairs and uses scientific method to understand and analyze the current state of affairs, right? So this is the way it understands the current state of affairs and says, well, this is the current state of affairs. We have democracy, for example, and democracy is flourishing, is fledgling. We have social programs. We have very good political institutions and so forth, right? So it makes those conclusions. Or maybe the opposite. We don't have good political institutions. They need to be strengthened. We need to have democratic principles. We need to have human rights entrenched and so forth, etc. Right? It doesn't matter, but it does analyze the current state of affairs. It views the world, the social world, in the present and uses words like is. Is current, right? Is current, is present terms, right? This is present terms, right? And so forth. So understanding this is very important, right? So, however, it does not evaluate it nor make value statements, unlike normative political theory. Let's take a look at this one more time. Empirical theory is concerned with the present or the current state of affairs, governmental affairs, or societal affairs. It uses scientific methods to understand and analyze the current state of affairs, but does not make a judgment on it. As I said earlier, it just says it the way it is. We have a strong political system, for example. We have a strong center, for example. If it's a federalist system, it will say the federalism is working as it should be, or it's not working as intended, etc., right? So it views the social world in the present and uses words like is. However, it does not evaluate it nor make value statements. These are two very important theories in the discipline. We're going to talk about additional theories, but these two, normative and empirical, have defined the discipline for a long time. Students, as I said earlier, have been the basis of research and scholarship in political science. Normative and empirical theories in political science.